Yud Kislev is the Chag HaGeula of the Mittel Rebbe. Someone said to me, you're supposed to say Tachanun today. I should wear this a tuk. I'm a Shvans. It's mamish Avle. Bemis. No excuse. It doesn't, in Hayom Yom it doesn't say that you don't say Tachanun today. But you know what? In Hayom Yom on your test Kislev, it doesn't even say that you don't say Tachanun. It says on Chag Kislev, Mincha Yinayim Tachanun. Erev Yitas Kislev, and Hayom Yom it says, so Mincha you don't say Tachanun. So Chakol Shkem V'Kal V'Chem. So why the Rebbe did not write by Erev Yud Kislev, B'Mincha Yinayim Tachanun, I don't know. But I don't think it's a shaila. Yud Kislev is a Yom Tov, just like Yud Tes Kislev is, and just like Yud Beis Tammuz is, and just like Chamisha B'Tevis is. These are our Moyadim, these are our Yomim Tevim. And the Minhag Chabad is as follows. On a yard site we say Tachnun. Right, in the Polish Welt, on a yard site, they don't say Tachnun because it's even Yom Tov Hilula, like it says in Zayir, by Tzadikim. Chod Shafil, as in Shulchan Aruch steht, that Yom Shemeis Ava Ve'ime, Yom Shemeis Rabba, you should fast. So the Rebbe said once that we don't go to this extreme or to this extreme. We don't fast on the one hand, but we don't not say Tachnun on the other. And the Rebbe related that he once asked the Friedrich Rebbe that L'chayr on the Yartat of a Tzaddik you should not say Tachnun. And the Friedrich Rebbe's answer to him was, Wenn denn is the Abesser Tzad Zogin Tachnun. That was the Rebbe's answer. When is there a better time? In other words, you're saying Tachnun is even Tshuva. So today in Shul, they read in Yeshiva by us, they read the Hayom Yom. So the person who read the Hayom Yom said, today you don't say Tachanun, today you don't do any Avedis. So she can run for Elechem Bes Medrash. Today, it's a Chag HaGeula from the Mittel Rebbe, say Tachanun. Okay? We know that it didn't become the same Shturim Dike Yom Tov. Like it has Kislev because of the Histalkus. The Mittel Rebbe passed away before it could be fully established. I saw in a Reshima from Chassidim, and I forgot where. I saw in a Reshima from Chassidim, in other words, not from the Friedrich Rebbe, where he says that Avraham Avinu was given two choices. Avraham Avinu was given two choices. Benegay to Yidden, like before the Jewish nation could become a nation, they had to go into Golos Mitzrayim. He was given two choices. One choice was Gehenim, another choice was Golos. Golos Mitzrayim was a fine Gehenim, I gotta tell you. As Gehenims go, it was a Gehenim. But it's not considered Gehenim, it's considered Golos. So, the Mittel Rebbe said, as Avraham was given two choices, Gehenim or Golos, Misa or Golos, so he said, the Tatat Fazich and Golos, upon him famir is geblieben the zweite Brede. That's the Lashon. He says, my father took the first choice, which is to go into Golos, exile. So I was evidently left with the second. And of course, assuming this Vart is always gehalten, I don't know the source of it, I don't remember, but it's from Chassidim. And the Rebbe had, by the way, in the Akdam of the Sefer Teira Sholem, the Rebbe writes that Chassidim were every word of the Rebbe was very important to them. And they were very medactic in every single word the Rebbe said. So even though you cannot say that everything that a Chassid records is absolutely precise, but you could be meshayed, you could guesstimate, you could assume that because of their devoutness and their effort at being precise, that in all likelihood it's likely to be precise and exact, correct. So as Allah Mittel Rebbe said, Famir is geblieben the zweite Brede, which is in Amisa. And the Mittel Rebbe after his arrest was infinite Stalkers. I talk for a living. That's what I do. I talk for a living. And I was Besrifke this past week. We verbringt about Yud Kislev. And I said something, and mir ist eingefallen. I mean, I said it because I thought it, but I never thought it before. That if you think about the Nesias of the Mittel Rebbe, if you think about the Nesias of the Mittel Rebbe, you could almost say his Nesias is 15 years. From beginning to end, 15 years. Less. 14 years and 11 months. Al-Rebbe was nostalgic of Dalatevis. The Mittel Rebbe was nostalgic Tes Kislev. And you have to remember, it took a few months till he came to Lubavitch. He didn't come to Lubavitch till Elul. And so long as he wasn't in Lubavitch, he was also he didn't have a Kriyas. So the Nesias, it's a very short Nesias. The Mittel Rebbe's Nesias is the shortest. The Rebbe Marash was also short. But the Rebbe Marash was in Lubavitch. It wasn't like he had to move to Lubavitch. The Mittler Rebbe's Nesius was very short. If you think about his Nesius, about the nature of his tenure, his Rebbeship, you can almost say, and I'm saying it, that it couldn't have been longer. It could not have been longer. Because the Tkufa of the Nesius of the Mittler Rebbe was so intense. It was so intense. It was such an intense period that you can't even imagine how it could go. In other words, you could almost say it's not a normal way to live. Imamish. The Chassidim of the Mittler Rebbe were shikir from Chassidus. Shikir, drunk from Chassidus. Not one or two, the whole Chevre, whoever was connected to the Mittler Rebbe, the way the Mittler Rebbe wanted them to be connected to him. Chassidus Chabad Haskola, Yedias Alakus, to know Alakus. You have in Tanya a couple of days ago in the Chitas, which nobody can figure out. You had a short little shir where the Rebbe says, Alter Rebbe says, that Yedias Seder Ishtalshlus is mitzvah Ramavanas. To understand the Sfiris and Seder Ishtalshlus is a mitzvah Ramavanas. It's an exalted and an uplifted mitzvah because there's the mitzvah of knowing the Eibush, Yedias Hashem. The Tkuf of the Mittler Rebbe was so intense. It was so intense. Mamish. The whole world was Chassidus. Finished. There wasn't an Elohim, it was just Chassidus. The Frierdiker Rebbe says about the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidim two things. Number one, was the Mittler Rebbe gegeben seine Chassidim, hat kein Rebbe seine Chassidim nicht gegeben. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe writes. What the Mittler Rebbe gave his Chassidim, no Rebbe gave his Chassidim. And number two, the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidim had not ausgefällt Mashiach. The Mittler Rebbe's Chassidim were not missing Mashiach because they lived in Mashiach. So it was so intense. You can't call it Toyu, but it was so intense. It was so intense. So Tzemach became a Rebbe. They didn't know where to put themselves. Why? Because the Mittler Rebbe said Chassidus, 6, 7 hours, 5 hours, 2 hours. The Chassidus never finished. And Tzemach Tzedek saying Chassidus a halbe Shah, a viertel Shah, drei viertel Shah, half an hour, a quarter of an hour, 3/4 of an hour. And they said to the Rebbe, you just started. It's an hors d'oeuvre. This is a little, a smorgasbord. And some Chassidus. This is a Chassidus. And it was such a anticlimax. It was such a change. The Mittler Rebbe's generation was an incredibly intense generation. Now, if we knew the Kavanah of the Mittler Rebbe, es wollten other Meshuggah geworden, other geworden the Mittler Rebbe. We don't understand the Kavanah Shabbat. But every Rebbe has an inyan. You know, this is what I told the girls. Every Rebbe has an inyan. Every Rebbe has an inyan. Every Rebbe has a chiddush. And the inyan of the Rebbe, he does in such a way that it's ad safe kol adeiros till the end of time. Every Rebbe brings into the world an inyan, or more than one inyan, but he brings it into the world not in the kind of a way that it is functional during his lifetime, and then when he's nostalgic, when he's nifted, it ends, because then he didn't have any hashpah on the world. It lasts, it survives him. I saw from the Rebbe in Tafshin Memhei, the Rebbe verbrengt Tes Kislev, the Rebbe verbrengen Tes Kislev, and the Rebbe must have said, I don't think they made a mistake in Hanoch, it was a weekday verbrengen. The Rebbe must have said in the verbrengen, as the Mittler Rebbe is given a Nossi B'deire, in past tense. The Mittler Rebbe was a Nossi in his generation. The Rebbe sent it out and wrote in square Isis, in Isis Menobois, in Hebrew, Mavhil, shocking, and crossed out the word was and wrote is. The Mittler Rebbe is a Rebbe in his generation, not was a generation. In other words, any person who's doing the inyanim that are consistent with the hira and the avodah of the Mittler Rebbe, he said the Mittler Rebbe is his Rebbe. And of course the Rebbe would always add, it's how the Mittler Rebbe is in the Rebbe, our Rebbe. But the inyan of the Mittler Rebbe was Yedias Elokus. I don't think it's even a question. Mittler Rebbe wanted people to fill their mind with the understanding of godliness, to the extent that this is all there was. Haskalah, Moyach, Kop. And the Mittler Rebbe had hundreds of young light, hundreds of people who became intoxicated, mamish, shikir with Yedias Elokus. And like we know from every Rebbe, the idea that a Rebbe brings something into this world that survives him, that lasts, that safe kol adeiros, is because it takes root, because it's nishtarish. It takes root, it germinates, and It anchors itself in the ground, and then it grows out of the ground, and continues to grow, and it produces seeds of which you can plant another tree, and another tree, and another tree. V'cholu is the Chassidim. The fertile earth in which a Rebbe plants his inyan, so that it should be sustained, that save kol hadeiros is his Chassidim, his Talmidim. And when the Talmidim and the Chassidim go in the way of the Rebbe, they create the reality in this world. They create reality in this world, which makes it sustainable. So the Chassidim in the middle of the Rebbe had to be as shaken as they were then, so that any yid, any time, any place could engage in learning about the Meibishter, learning about Hashem, and having a hasaga and a lakut. You know, in the beginning there's a sefer called Kuntris in Yana Shalteiras HaChasidus, right? There's a little essay. It's not little at all. That the Rebbe said and wrote. It's called On the Essence of Chasidus. It's called in English. In Yana Shalteiras HaChasidus. It's a masterpiece of work that the Rebbe spent a lot of time on, and it's considered an entity unto itself, separate from the other sikhs. And in the beginning of that Kuntris, the Rebbe presents 4 ideas of what Chasidus came into the world for. One of them is to wake the world up from a state of hisalfus, from a state of faint. The second one is Chosid Soirfon, the idea that Hasidim are Lefnim Yishur Sadin, they do mitzvahs in Aseitev and in Sor Merah with the Yiras Shamayim. The third Indian is to be Mavarer Mides, either Lishanes Midesav Ativim, or in a higher level, Lishanes Teva Midesav. And the fourth Indian is to know godliness, intellectually. You should understand godliness in your mind in such a way that it should not only be understandable to the godly soul, it should even be understandable to the intellectual soul, to the extent that even the natural soul, the animal soul, should also be able to understand it. A person should be able to understand God. This is the Chassidus Alter Rebbe, Chabad, Chochma Bina B'das. But the Mittel Rebbe, he's called Recheves Hanor Bina. He took the words of the Alter Rebbe and expanded them and deepened them, and he brought them down to a level. I mean, they push it verstehen. You can understand them. The human mind can understand the Lukus, right? You know the Vart. I love to tell you this Vart. It doesn't say it in these words. I looked it up a few times. I'm not repeating it precisely, but the Teuchen Advarim is that when Dr. Zellickson got married, Chanukah Toshin Yud Beis, the first Chanukah of the Rebbe's Nesias. So the Rebbe went to the Kabbalah Sponim. Those days he went to Kabbalah Sponim, not just to the Chuppah. And he spoke Sichas. The Tzaddik Kala, Dr. Zellickson's Rebbetzin, Dr. Zellickson's wife, were not from a Lubavitcher Mishpacha. They were Deutsche Yidden. I guess you would call them Jews from Washington Heights, Yakis. And there were 2 Rabbonim. And the Rebbe spoke long. The Rebbe spoke about Mesiras Nefesh. So when Dr. Zellickson passed away, his son Michal got Seichel. He took the Sikha that the Rebbe said by his father's Kabbalah's Ponim, and he prepared it, and he sent it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe edited the Sikha. That's Magiya gewesen, and it's printed in the beginning of the Sefer. Told us he made a biography of his father. Told us about Avraham Abba Harefe, he calls it, a book on his father's life. And now it's in Lekut Sikha Sachet Lamed Nesaf. As you can see the Sikha inside. At the end of the Sikha, there's 2 comments, 2 exchanges in the Rebbe and these Rabbonim. One of them was the Rebbe spoke about Nifa Mesiras Nefesh, and they asked the Rebbe, why is the Rebbe talking about Mesiras Nefesh? And I'm assuming the reason they asked the question, it was so close to the Holocaust. And the Rebbe said to him, the Rebbe the Shver had gesagt, as in America darf man reden wegen Mesiras Nefesh. The Rebbe answered them that the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe the Shver, the Friedrich Rebbe said that in America you have to talk about Mesiras Nefesh. And it's always gehalten, auf Tanya Perik Chavei. You live in a society where you don't eat Mesiras Nefesh or drink Mesiras Nefesh, you have to talk Mesiras Nefesh. It says in Tanya. Right? It says Moshe Rabbeinu spoke about Krishma, Derish, Nichas Ola, because when you live in a time when there's no Sakana Mesiras Nefesh, then you have to say Krishma, you have to talk about Dinam. Anyway, this is one word. The other word was the Rebbe spoke about Chassidus. And one of them said to the Rebbe something to the effect, and I'm not repeating it precisely, but something to the effect that Afanem tzech nor mit Nigel nicht mit Nister. He told the Rebbe that he only learns Nigel, he doesn't learn Nister. And the Rebbe said to him, because you don't learn it, it's Nister. Because you don't learn it, it's Nister. So I have a limud on this word. Only problem is the Rebbe's wording is not this. I'm not repeating it correctly. I've looked at it 10 times, and I know I remember it incorrectly, but I can't fix it in my head. You understand? So I'm not quoting it the way it's written, but I'm not misleading. The teuchen is what I'm saying, I think. And the hezbed is, a person learns Kabbalah. Even after he learns Kabbalah, it's a secret. Because he can't understand it. You hear the words, as they say, you know the map. And if you have a Edelkeit, you have a shtickl gefühl. But Pnimius HaTorah is like Chochmah. Even after you have Chochmah, it's always fleeting. Chassidus Chabad. Chochmah, Bina, Vadas. It's Pnimius HaTorah. It's Nishmasa Deiraisa. It's Mamish the Neshama of Torah. It's Kabbalah. But it's brought down to a level where a human being can mamish understand it. Not understand it in his nefesh elokis because he has a neshama and he has a munah, but understand it in seichel and nushi. Elokus in Chassidus Chabad is brought down to a level where the human brain can wrap its mind around it and understand it like it understand any other inyan in seichel, or to say it more precisely, any other inyan in Torah. That's the famous word from the Rebbe Rashab, which is in Teira Shalom, that the Rebbe would repeat from time to time. And the Rebbe Rashab said, Ich denk, als the Ike Yefutza Manasecha Chutza hat sich angeheben nach Peterburg. This is a famous quote from the Rebbe Rashab. I think, it's my opinion, that the primary phenomena of the dissemination of Chassidus Chutza to the outside begins after Peterburg, after Alter was released from prison. Before there's somebody in my morim. The Teira Eid is my morim from before Peterburg. The Teira Eid. Yeah, the Tanya is from before Peterburg. There's a ha'ara from the Rebbe Rashab about that, and also in Teira Shalom. The word is after Peterburg, the Alter Rebbe brought the lakus to seichel. So it's not that you're imagining that you understand it, that you're feeling or understand it. A person pushing understands with seichel and nushi, seichel and shativis, in Yanam of lakus. And the Rebbe, which so to speak, brought this out in the most expansive way. And the ikir is, and it is gemont bazan chasidim. This is what his chassidim did for breakfast, for lunch, for supper, for vacation, for whatever. That's all they did. Parnasa they didn't have. They were broke. They were so poor. And their whole world was to verstehen about chassidus. Primis HaTorah. So the Rebbe says, this Indian, this Gilui is not for 15 years. During those 15 years, they were shikir, but this is at Seif Kol HaDeirus. So you can learn chassidus, understand all the kus. This is the whole Indian of Chabad, but particularly from the middle of the Rebbe. So Nun Beis, the Rebbe spoke Lech Lecha a number of times. The idea of Moichem Be'etzem, the Bar Mitzvah Maimer, the Bar Mitzvah Maimer, all the mothers know the Bar Mitzvah Maimer. Why the Tatas have the Shkatzait, so the mothers have to know the Bar Mitzvah Maimer. Trust me, your husband doesn't understand it any better than you. It's not an easy Maimer, I promise you. So you have Moichem Be'etzem and Moichem Shocham Alamidas. He's talking about the difference between learning Torah and being Mekayim Mitzvahs Tefillah. Remember that? That's the end of the Maimer, yeah? So he speaks differently. There's two kinds of seichel. A person learns something with his mind so that it should affect his heart. Another thing, the person learns it with his mind that has nothing to do with his heart. Nothing. It's too far removed from his heart. Just to understand. So it says that the Chassidus Chabad was revealed in the world before Mashiach in a way of Tayameh Chayim Zocha, that we're tasting the Eid of Mashiach before Mashiach. Right? That's what it is. Tayameh Chayim Zocha, we're tasting the Eid of Mashiach before Mashiach. I saw a Reshima where the Rebbe turned to Yankel Katz once on the Sudas upstairs, and he said to him, "Erzähl the Meise mitten aha. Du bist dort gewembisch as the Rebbe der Schwer erzählt." He told Yankel Katz all of a sudden that he should repeat the story with the aha. And he said, you were there when the Frierdiker Rebbe told the story with the aha. What's the story with the aha? That the Tzemach Tzedek said once that after Mashiach comes, Pnimis HaTorah is going to be revealed. He says that no one is going to understand. It's going to be a surprise for everybody. But the Chassid is going to say, aha! So this is what I thought. This is what I thought I understood, and now I see how I distorted it. But the Rebbe said, it's all worth it for the aha. It will be familiar enough to us that we should be able to say, aha. So we have Chassidus Chabad as a Termeh, as a taste for Mashiach. But the Rabbeim always said that the limud of Chassidus has to be v'hashevei sal vavech. If a person learns Chassidus, it doesn't reach his heart, it doesn't affect his practical life, the Frierdiker Rebbe used to say, better don't learn. So the Rebbe said in Nun Beis that after Mashiach comes, the idea of knowing godliness is an end in itself. Before Mashiach comes, knowing godliness is supposed to affect our avodah, our heart, and our behavior. After Mashiach comes, knowing the Eibishter becomes a Matorah, becomes a Tachlis, becomes an end in itself. So the Rebbe spoke. Now, Tavshin and Beis, the Rebbe said, we're holding by, I forgot the expression I never used, but the Nekuda was, Moichem Be'etzem. You learn Chassidus just to understand in the brain. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe that represents this more than any other is the Chassidus of the Mittel Rebbe, who's today's Chag HaGula of the Mittel Rebbe. And of course, you all know the Rebbe's word. The Rebbe said that Yutis Kislev is connected to Pada B'Sholem. And Yud Kislev is also connected to Pada B'Sholem. But it's not the same connection. Yutis Kislev is connected to Pada B'Sholem because Yutis Kislev was Tuesday. But it isn't always Tuesday. It happened to be Tuesday that year. And this year, Tavshin Pei, also Yutis Kislev is Tuesday. And the same is true Yud Bis Tammuz, it was also Tuesday. And Chamisha B'Tevis, Hey Tevis was also Tuesday. Yeah, but Yud Kislev is the Yimei HaChodesh. You see, Yud Kislev Pada B'Sholem is in the regular Chitas. So every year Yud Kislev is connected to Pada B'Sholem, not only when Yud Kislev is on a Tuesday. Today Yud Kislev is on a Sunday. That's how it was the first time. The first Yud Kislev was Shabbos and Sunday. Tes Kislev was Shabbos and Yud Kislev was Sunday. And they all know the story that the Rebbe was in the middle of saying Chassidus. The middle of the Rebbe was saying Chassidus, Ata Echad V'Shimcha Echad Umig Amachak Yisrael Yechad. They came in to tell him that he's free. They saw him saying Chassidus, and they saw the people listening, and they didn't want to interrupt. By the time he finished, Shabbos was over, so the Chag HaGeula became the day after the birthday, and what would be 2 years later, the Histalkus of the Mittel Rebbe. Yud Kislev. So the Rebbe says the Pada B'Sholem of the Mittel Rebbe is even more than the Pada B'Sholem of the Alter Rebbe, because it doesn't require a special circumstance and a special kind of Tilim, what's called Amidas Tilim B'Shufi, saying extra Tilim as is divided according to the Maze of the week. The regular Chitas of the Yemei HaChedesh, Yutreis, Kapitel is Kapitel on Hey. Today's Chitas, the regular Chitas. Kapitel on Hey, Pada B'Sholem Nav Shem Mikrovli. And of course the Rebbe went on to explain the difference between the Shalom by the Alter Rebbe, the Shalom by the Mittel Rebbe. There's a lot of beautiful things. And the Ikar Nekuda is that the Ikar Pada B'Sholem as the Mashiach comes, yes, and Ad Mosai, the Genog with the explanations, Nafam the Gula B'Pel Mamish. Okay, we want Mashiach now. Okay, so let's learn Tanya. I talked a lot. I talked too long. I talked 20 minutes. I talked much too long. That was supposed to be a 2-minute introduction. Kuf means a period. Yeah. Top of page Tezvov Amid Beit. Top of page 30. Ve'oid nikroyim b'nei Ali. I really did not plan to spend 20 minutes on Yud Kislev, but everything is Bashgacha Pratis. I'm teaching you a Shir Tanya. I'm learning what I planned, not just 20 minutes. The first line, top of the page. The Alter Rebbe in Peirik Yud is talking about tzaddik. Yeah, we know, we've been through this 4 or 5 times. We're learning this Peirik with Hashem's help. That the Alter Rebbe asserts, what's the definition of a tzaddik? 2 things. Oyevei Hashem, sinura. That's a tzaddik. A tzaddik doesn't just do what Hashem says and so on. A tzaddik loves the Eibishter and he hates evil. So the Rebbe's lashon is, in the pasuk it says sineh, but there's also the word mius. And the Rebbe, in the Rebbe's notes, he argues, analyzes the difference between the word sineh and the word mius. It's close enough for our great minds. Okay, a tzaddik loves God, and a tzaddik hates Ra. When you have a Beinani in chapter Tezvav, is a Beinani that's called Layavadi. There's a Beinani. He's not working hard. It's easy for him. So mit was is that a Beinani nishka tzaddik? If a guy is a Beinani and he brings 3 characteristics of his nature. Yeah, mitzunen b'tivei, mechuser hegesh hano b'tivei, and masmed b'limude b'tivei. All 3 of these characteristics together. You're called, by nature you're a cold person. By nature you don't have a special geschmack in taivas. And by nature you're a marash cheder. You're an introvert, so you're a bookworm. You're a studious person by nature. If you have these 3 characteristics, you're a Beinani Le'avadi. So the kids always ask me, so what's between Le'avadi, Beinani, and tzaddik? And this is the answer, because a tzaddik is not defined by not sinning. A tzaddik is not defined by not wanting to sin. A tzaddik is not defined by doing mitzvahs. A tzaddik is defined by loving Hashem and hating evil, and a Beinani doesn't have it. Period. And it's based kavim shkulim. If the more you love Hashem, the more you hate evil. The more you hate evil, the more you love Hashem. And that's the difference between tzaddik she'enei gomer and tzaddik gomer. So last week we went back to Tzaddik Gomor and we added a label. Every Tzaddik Gomor is also called Bnei Aliyah. Okay, they're synonyms. Every Tzaddik Gomor, the person who's a perfect Tzaddik, which means that he fought with the Yetzer Hara, and as the Lashon of the Rebbe is, he killed it completely. And by killing it completely, it was memele. That's the wording of the Alter Rebbe in the beginning. Memele automatically transformed to Kedusha. A Tzaddik Gomer is Bnei Aliyah, because he's completely transformed his evil into good, and he's on this higher level of Tzaddik, which is called Ben Aliyah. Okay? And this is what the Zayar said, right? This happens to be the Zayar of Reish Chodesh Kislev. I told this to you last week. Last week was Reish Chodesh, yeah? Today is Yud, so last week is coming from Reish Chodesh. Reish Chodesh Kislev, there's a story with the Rebbe, that the Rebbe was Metzayin Takdomas HaZayar. About how Rabbi came Lamaila, and Rabbi Shimon said to Mashiach, Zimnin Yahavulai, give him more years. So it says, Yahavulai Zimnin, they gave him more years and he left. It's a Zayar. That Zayar, that story, the Zayar begins with the Zayar that we have on the bottom of the previous page. Look, turn back your page. Rabbi wanted to go into the Heich of Shem Yechoy, which is basically a higher level in Gan Eden. Shama kola nafik va'amar. I heard a voice that emerged and said, Man min chayin, anybody amongst you, who's already successfully transformed darkness to light, v'tamen medida, lemiska, the taste of bitter sweetness, ad le'yezen hacha, only then should you come here. And of course the whole vart was, it Rabchia was a tzaddik gomer. So it wasn't only that Rabchia was able to go into Gan Eden. I'm using these words even though I don't necessarily know this is the exact shot. He was able to go into a higher madrega, able to go into Gan Eden. Okay, it's a tzaddik gomer. That's why every tzaddik is called Ben Aliyah. Okay, this is a very important, so to speak, technical criteria. If you're a perfect tzaddik, you transform Yerata Tev, you're a Ben Aliyah. This was last Sunday's class. What's today's class? A whole new idea. And this new idea, and we're going to use this as our stage setter, because I finished last week's class with this. I don't know if you remember, at the end of last week's class, I gave you a Hagdama to today's class. There's a category called Chosid. And a Tzaddik Gomer, a Ben Aliyah, is also called a Chosid. Right? What's written in the Mishnah Chazal? Ezehu Chosid, Hamis Chasid im Koinei. What makes a person a Chosid? That he does a Chesed to Koinei. Who's Koinoi? So there's two understandings of the word Koinoi. The simple understanding of the word Koinoi means with Hashem. He does the Eibish Derech Chesed. Koinoi means he does the Eibish Derech Chesed. Now how do you do the Eibish Derech Chesed? I'm sure there's many ways when you Eibish Derech Chesed. But L'moshel, just for the sake of argument, you don't have this in Tanya really, but it says in Chassidus, in my mother, that a person learns Teda L'Shma. A person learns Teda for Teda's own sake. He raises up the Teda and he's miyachad the Teda with the Eibishter, is doing the Teda a favor. He is doing the Torah a favor. He's learning the Teda, not L'kasher nafshoi v'dai toi b'Hashem, not to connect himself with the Eibishter. He's already connected. He's learning Teda to connect the Eibishter with the Teda. And the same is true mitzvahs. A person does the mitzvahs, a madrega of L'shma, Kvayachal is doing the mitzvahs a favor. That's called Mischasadim Koina. He's doing a favor for his maker. But there's another touch. Kan means a nest. Kan means a nest. Gam tzipir, motzabayir, zodroir, kain lo. Kan means a nest. So what's the second shot? That the nature of the favor that he does for his maker is direlei yisbarach b'tachtainim. You see? So this, you understand? The nest means the world. It means the world. It means the world. That the Eibishter wants a home in the lowest world. There's a ma'aseh that Tzemach Tzedek b'tanigim. That the Tzemach Tzedek was once saying Tilim. I'm messing this up so bad. Tzemach Tzedek was saying Tilim. The Tzemach Tzedek gesagt auf sich. Tzemach Tzedek said about himself, Ich ken alles. Ich ken afil sagen Tilim wie a poshta yidin. Tzemach Tzedek said, I can even say Tilim like a simple woman. So he was once saying Tilim. I think it's the Tzemach Tzedek. Gam tzipir motza bayis udrer kein lo, which means everybody has a home. Even a bird finds itself a place and a nest. He said, and the Eibishter doesn't have a home. There's a vart. I think it's from Tzemach Tzedek. I think, but it's a vart from the Geisha Tzadikim. That everything he quoted the pasuk, Gam Tzip and what's the Cain law. Everything that the Eibishter made has a home, and Koyachal Hashem himself, Liknes Leibai, he's looking for a place to live in his own. And that's the pshat. Two ideas. Idea number one is I'm doing Koyachal a favor for Eibishter. It's a tzaddik gomer. And idea number two is what is the nature of the favor he's doing for Eibishter. He's making a deal of his baruch. And the second inyan is even deeper than the first inyan. And both of these inyanim are deeper than when we spoke last week. Because last week we defined the tzaddik gomer as a ben aliyah. And what is the meaning of ben aliyah? He raised himself up. This week we're adding that a tzaddik gomer is a ben aliyah, but what is the nature of a ben aliyah? That Klayachal, he serves the Eibishter not for what he needs, but Klayachal for what the Eibishter needs. But in what the Eibishter needs itself, you have these two levels. The first level is for the Mekubalim in the room, and you're all grace of Mekubalim. Like I'm a big Mekubal. It means Midas of Atzilis. And then you have this means Malchus of Atzilis, a lower level. And this is the Kavanah. This is the purpose of the creation. So let's learn inside, okay? Says the Rebbe 8, page 30 at the top, page 30. Okay, there's another reason why a tzaddik gomer is called a ben aliyah. Because what he does, even in doing good, in learning Torah, doing mitzvahs. Now let's explain what he's saying. A ben aliyah in Sur Meirah, we understand. A ben aliyah in saying away from you, we understand. Why? Because what's a tzaddik gomer? Tzaddik gomer is a person who is born, inside of him there's ra on some level. And he cleaned it out. And he pushed it out, and he cleaned it out, and he purged it out, and he refined it out, and he fired it out, and then it became transformed. So a tzaddik gomer who makes his ra into toiv, his evil into good, it's called a ben aliyah. Here the Rebbe says, not only is a tzaddik gomer a ben aliyah because of how he transforms his evil, he's a ben aliyah in the good that he does, because he's doing it for the Meibish. Look inside. Huletzeirach gaveya, it's for the sake of the Eibish Klayachol. Umayla, Mayla, Druma, Mailas, higher and higher still to the highest madregas. So you're not only a ben aliyah, because the tzaddik gomer is not only a ben aliyah because what the tzaddik gomer does for himself, personally, what the tzaddik gomer does for himself, personally, is transform his darkness into light. But even the good that he does is also a ben aliyah, because he's doing it kayachol for the Eibish, that the Eibish that needs him. Kayachol. It says the Rebbe, it's not only that he's a yid to attach himself to the Eibishter, to satisfy, to sate the thirst of their soul, which is thirsty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Pasuk says hoy. Right? Hoy is the biblical way of saying oi. Hoy is oi. Called some of the cholamayim. If you're thirsty, go drink. Which because of Mokamach, as it's explained later, so the Rebbe writes in the footnote, Sof Perik Mem. Sof Perik Mem. Yeah, Mekubal HaNovi. Hoy called some of the cholamayim. Okay, Sof Perik Mem. We'll leave Sof Perik Mem for Sof Perik Mem, okay? Yeah, if you're thirsty, you drink. Hoy called some, you're thirsty, you drink. So this is for you, right? In Tanya before, and we talked about it at the time. In Perek Dalet or Perek Hey, the end of Perek Hey, I think. In the end of chapter 5, Perek Hey, the Alter Rebbe says that Lishma, what does it mean to Lishma? Lishma hainu lakasha nafshe b'daiti lavaya. In Tanya, Lishma means to connect yourself to the Eibush. It's also called Lishma. Here there's a new Lishma. Lishma is not about connecting myself to the Eibishter, because connecting yourself to the Eibishter is called L'davka be'yizborach l'ravis nafshe tatzmeya ha'kasam b'luchol. You see, it's a change. It's a change. And the reason for the change, Bepashtis, is because in Tanya Perek he was talking to a Beinani, and in Tanya Perek Yud, he's talking to a perfect tzaddik. But there's two madrigas of Lishma. The lower madriga of Lishma is that I'm learning Torah and doing mitzvahs for the sake of Torah and mitzvahs alone, is that I should have a connection to Eibishter. Here we have something else. Lishma means to give the Eibishter what the Eibishter needs, right? Du sagst aus, was du darfst, was man darf dir, sagst du gar nicht, right? You keep telling what you need, what you need it for, you don't know. The Madrega V'Tzadek Gomer is called the Ben Aliyah, is because the Torah and mitzvahs that he does, Kva Yachal is doing for the Eibishter. Ela ke de pirishu b'tikunim, but instead, like it says in Tikkunei Zehad, Zehu Chassid Hamiz Chassid Im Keinei, who is considered a Chassid, and of course you know that a Chassid is Lefnim Yishur Sadin. In Ayem Yem it says that Chassid is a Loshan Yashan Nation. Adam Arishon was a Chassid Gomer. Chassid is an ancient terminology, and it has many significant meanings, right? In Yonesh Al Teiras HaChassidus, there's 4 definitions of Chassid. Takes out of his alphas, Lefnim Yishur Sadin, Bir Hamidetz, Yidis Alakus Seichel Anushi, like I mentioned before. Yes, a Chassid has a lot of inyanim, but ultimately, what's a Chassid? He does things for Meibishn. He does things for Hashem's sake rather than for his own sake. And he explains, Vas Meitim Chenim can't delay with his nest. Now again, in the Maimorim, I remember seeing this in Hemshchaim Beis. I don't see it here in these footnotes, but this is Yen Eraya. In Ayin Beis, there's a discussion. I see here a lot of other things. I don't see Hemshchaim Beis. But in Hemshchaim Beis, according to my recollection, there's a discussion on this particular Tanya, and it's broken down into 2. One is you're doing the Eibishter a favor, and the other is you're doing the Eibishter's nest a favor, which is even deeper. Even though the nest is a lower level than the Koine, the Eibishter himself, because you're fulfilling his intent. Let's read it to say. You're doing Kvayachal Hashem a favor by being miyached yichudim, by bringing the Eibishter down into this world and making what's called a dira leis barach v'tachterim. And again, I'm going to tell you what I told you last week on Sunday. That in Tanya Perek Mamalef, and by the way, there's a lot of words from our shtikle which are repeated word for word in Tanya Perek Mamalef, particularly the quotes from the Zayed. It's the same shtikle, it's the same inyan. The end of Perek Mamalef and Tanya and this end of Perek Yud have a very similar constant. The Alter Rebbe talked about Mesiras Nefesh. In the end of chapter 41 in Tanya, Alter Rebbe talks about Mesiras Nefesh. And he says that there's 2 levels of Mesiras Nefesh. The first level of Mesiras Nefesh is the person gives away his life for his relationship with Hashem. He shouldn't be cut off of the Meibishter. A Yid gives away his life, he shouldn't lose his connection to Hashem. And Alter Rebbe says this is by every Yid. Every Jew is ready to give his life not to lose his attachment to HaKadosh Baruch. But then he says something else. There's a higher level of Mesiras Nefesh. What's Mesiras Nefesh? That I sacrifice my life to fulfill not what I need, but what the Eibishter needs. To bring the Eibishter into this world. And he says, to be Mesa Nefesh, not that I'm cut off from Eibishter, is natural to every Jew. To be Mesa Nefesh, to put aside what I need for myself, Beruchnias and Begashmias, to bring Hashem into the world as the Eibishter needs. This is not by everybody. It's not by everybody. It's a special madrega. That's why every single morning when we say the words, which is the same idea, we say b'shem kol Yisrael. B'shem kol Yisrael, if you translate it, literally means on behalf of all of the Jews. Every morning you get up in shul and you say, on behalf of all of the Jewish people, we're doing kach v'kach. Who appointed you? Who appointed you? B'shem kol Yisrael. We all do it every day. Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Einfach HaTag. Every day you start before Baruch Shama, you read that line. L'shem Yirad Kodesh B'nich V'Shchentei, L'yach L'shem Yudkei B'Vav Kodesh L'im, B'shem kol Yisrael. On behalf of all the Jewish people, who appointed you? B'shem kol Yisrael. So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains it. He says, since it's not real for every person to be holding in a madrege, where the nature of his Mesiras Nefesh is not giving away his life, he should not become separate from the Eibishter, but giving away his life for what the Eibishter needs. But Hashem needs him for. Nitvas du darfst. Not a vas man darf dir, not why you're needed, what you need, but why you're needed for. So you include yourself with the klal. Because the Alter Rebbe makes an assertion, and you have this all over the Tanya, that the klal is perfect. The community of Jews are perfect. The individual Jew is whatever he is. So whenever we involve ourselves in an avodah, where there's a presumption, where there is an assumption that it's not realistic for some people, for most people, for many people to do. So you join with the klal. Because by joining with the klal is emes. So as a yachid, as an individual, I don't mean this, but as a member of Klal Yisrael, I mean this also. And I told this to you last week, I talked about it many times, that every time, and I think it's literally, B'li Yetzim and HaKlal, every time the Alter Rebbe references Yechida Shabenefesh. Now for those who know the Tanya, the word Yechida does not appear in the Tanya even once. Alter Rebbe doesn't have the word Yechida in Tanya. The word in Tanya that represents Yechida is the word Chochma Shabenefesh. Chochma is Yechida. Every time the Alter Rebbe mentions Chochma, and he means the Ina Mesidus Nefesh, he says Klal Yisrael. Klal. Because it's the same idea. The Alter Rebbe holds that the union of Yechida exists by every Jew, not because of who we are as individuals, but in as much as we're part of the Klal Yisrael, the collective of the Jewish people. So every occasion, every time he mentions Yechida, he mentions Klal Yisrael. And in Perek Mav, same thing. When the Yid is doing Mesidus Nefesh, to not be cut off from the Eibishter, that he Alter Rebbe said everybody's holding by. But the higher level of Mesidus Nefesh, which is called here Ezeu Chosid HaMischased Im Koinoi Im Kan Delay, which means his Chassidus consists of not asking himself what he needs, not what he needs in terms of a nice house and a nice car and so on, but in terms of what he needs to connect to the Eibishter. But instead, his avodah is Vos Daf Mendir, what the Eibishter needs from me. Since this is not something which every Yid can realistically be holding by, so you include yourself with Klal Yisrael, and Klal Yisrael certainly wants the right thing, and that's what the Alter Rebbe speaks to. And he brings a Zohar to support this, and this Zohar is quoted word for word again in chapter Mem Aleph. Kebra, like a son, the Ishtadel, that efforts himself, that exerts himself, that's Mesa Nefesh, Basar Avui Ve'imei, in pursuit of what's good for his father and his mother. The Rachim Loin, he loves his father and his mother, Yatin Migarmei, more than he loves his own Garmei, that means his own bone, his own goof. V'nafshe in his own nefesh, v'ruche in his own ruach, v'nishmase in his own neshama, and then it says the word v'chulu. I don't know what the v'chulu goes, but I'm sure it's good things. U'maser Garmei lemisa alayhu, he gives away his goof, Lechman from Misa, for the sake of his parents, Lemifrak Leid, in order to redeem them. V'chulu, K'mesher Kosav Makabacha is going to explain someplace else, and as I told you before, someplace else means Peirik Mem Aleph, chapter 41. So now, you know that in Rashi it says different. In the Gemara it says different. The Gemara says, that Rashi brings in Chumash, Pashas Mishpatim, if a person is Baba Machteres, someone breaks and enters, and he comes into the house at night in a tunnel, right? Imba machteres yimotzei hagane v'hukav ameis ein lei damim. You find someone in your house, you shoot and you ask questions afterwards. Habo lahargach hashkeim lahargoy. Right? We learned that halacha from this din. Someone is coming to hurt you, you don't wait for them to hurt you first, you hurt them back. And if someone is in your home, there's a presumption, a chazakah, that he's not only killing to steal, but as the Gemara says, the Lashon, lahareg or lehareg, to kill or be killed. So you kill him first, you ask questions later. With one exception. Im zorcha shemesh alav damim lei. If this person who breaks into his house has the sun shining on him, says Rashi, what's made the sun is shining on him? That it's borer kashemesh, that will never hurt you. He's coming into your house by machteres, he's sneaking into your house in the middle of the night to steal. But zorcha shemesh alav, you know with the certitude of the sunlight, that he won't kill you, then he yesh leidamim, and if you kill him, yechayav mis. What's the example? A father who comes to steal by his son, Rachmana litzlan. And the Gemara says, and Rashi brings it in Chumash, but it only goes one way. A father who will steal by his son, he'll steal but he won't kill. A son by his father will kill his father, and he brings it. Rabbi Kiva says he saw Anira Isi. Rabbi Kiva said, I saw a man tie up his father and feed him to his dog. As an infant of Avodah Zarah. Rashi says it in Chumash. It's based on my Mari Chazal, of course. So the point is, Api Nigle, the love of a father for a child is more than the love of a child for a father. Api Kabal Faket. What does it say here? I'll read it again. Kibra like a son, the Ishtadel Basravuvi, he makes every his father and his mother. The Rachim line that he loves himself, Yatem Egarmei, more than he loves his own body. V'nafshi, v'ruche, v'nishmasa, and his nefesh, and his ruach, and his neshama, u'mosar garmei lemisa alayu, he gives away his goof for misa, for their sake, lemifrak lein to redeem. So you have a clear difference between nigla detayed and nista detayed. In halacha, there's a presumption that the love of a child for his father will never be as great as the love of a parent for a child. It's not just nigla, it's mitzias. You see the Bukhari. The Rebbe said once. The Rebbe said, I heard a tape where the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe sagt, as a mama can hodiv and send kinder can it ois halt na mama. The Rebbe said it. I heard a tape where the Rebbe said this teichen, that when a mother can raise 10 children, and 10 children can live to their mother. It's a mitzias. It's so hard to understand, but there's a lot of things that are hard to understand. So apiniga, the love of parents for a child is always stronger than the love of a child for parents. But api Kabbalah, it's not like that. The Zayah says that he does a madrig of tzaddik gomer, and he loves the Eibishter more than he loves himself. Like a child who loves his father and his mother more than he loves himself, he's prepared to Rahman al to lose his life on their behalf, for their sake. And that's what this is. What's the difference between the Ben Aliyah before the 2 dots and the Ben Aliyah after the 2 dots? So again, to use technical language, the Ben Aliyah before the 2 dots was called Sur Meirah. A Ben Aliyah, I've transformed all my evil, my Cheshech Ta'er, my Mirira Lemisku, Adla Yesin Hacha, and I transformed it completely. So when you destroy the Ra completely, so the Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of this Pedic, Memela, automatically it becomes Toiv. It's about me. The second Hajj Ben Aliyah is in Aseitei, with the Ben Aliyah's involvement with the Eibishter, is Klayachol doing the Eibishter a favor. So we have 2 shtikelach, 2 pieces here at the end of this Pedic about Tzaddik Gomer. He's going back to what he said in the beginning of the Pedic. The Tzaddik Gomer has totally transformed his evil into good, so automatically there's only good within him. And he's therefore called Ben Aliyah. And now we're adding the second idea that he's a chosid. Chosid means he puts the Eibishter before himself. This is the higher touch Ben Aliyah. And again, I told you this last week, that there was a Yid who got up in 770 once, and he told a story that the Friedrich Rebbe, I told you a story about Arichas last week, so I'm telling it now, but Kitzur. The Friedrich Rebbe sent him on a shlichus here in America. And he told the Friedrich Rebbe, was will ich haben von them? What am I going to have in the shlichus? And the Friedrich Rebbe gave him those eyes. And I heard from a number of people that the Rebbe's eyes were strong. I don't need anybody to tell me, because I had the experience of looking into those eyes more than once. But somebody told me that the Friedrich Rebbe's eyes, they give in fire, even stronger. And the Rebbe Tzachayim Mushke said about the Rebbe Rashab, the same thing, that his eyes were even stronger than the fire of the Friedrich Rebbe, the Tanya. Shikam took a look at this guy, it was like he burned a hole through him. So of course he was very intimidated by this experience, and he repeated the story in 770, some 50 years later, 45 years later, and he said the following, he said, by the Friedrich Rebbe, you could mistakenly ask such a question. So it was wrong for ask, but it was part of the tradition. What does he gain in Avodas Hashem from this shlichus? He says, today you would never think to ask. Because the Rebbe took something, which is a high madreg in Tzaddik Gomer, and made it into Aleph Beis. Literally, the Rebbe took something, which is a higher madreg in Tzaddik Gomer, and he made it into Aleph Beis. What's Aleph Beis? Of Vos Daf Madir, right? What's a Lubavitcher in our generation? What he does for somebody else. Period. What you do for yourself is very nice and very important and very serious and very necessary. But the Chassidus is defined by HaMischasadim Koina. You go to wherever you need it, and you do what you need to do. You make a diddle Eis Barach B'Tachtenim, but that's not HaMischasadim Koina. Koyach, you do it from Nebish. Then comes the bracket. Ushneim Eilim B'Konech. You should know, says the Alter Rebbe. Even though I divided this into 2 things, and us here at Beis Medrash Nashim divided it into 2 Sundays, Gimel Kislev and Yud Kislev. One is a tzaddik gomer who's avodah prates. He's serving Neibishter by himself, and he's called Ben Aliyah because he raises up his neshama to Neibishter, to his guf, and so on. And after the 2 that you have a second Hajj Ben Aliyah, which means Kvayachim Mischasadim Koina. He's doing a favor for Neibishter. Says the Alter Rebbe, be'emes, they're both the same thing. Why? Ki Ayadei Habirudim, when one effectively and successfully achieves bidur, clarity. Like it says earlier, he transforms the darkness to light and the bitterness to sweetness. That mystically, according to Kabbalah, they become purified from Sfiras Nega. Says the Rebbe, Maile Mayin Nukva. We bring an Isanusa Latata, an arousal from below, which creates a parallel arousal from above. Yeah? V'nasem Yechudim Al Yainim. And when we make a union from the bottom up down here, on the high there's a union formed. Lahayirid Mayin Tchudim, to bring back down the masculine waters, which means Isanusa L'Yela. Shehein Hey, that these are Meimei HaChasadim, the waters of kindness. Shebachol mitzvah, which every mitzvah has. Meramach mitzvahs asay, from the 248 positive commandments. Shakul and Hein, that all of them are Bechinas Chasadim, they're the kindness. Or Mayin Dechurun, and the masculine waters of Elokus. The height of this means Hamshachas Kedushas Elokusei Yizbarach, the bringing down of the holiness of godliness. Blessed be He. Milmailo Amataf, from a higher level to a lower level, is Slavish Betachtenim, to invest itself, herself, themselves in the lower world. It's going to be explained in other places, and again I'm going to assume, because I don't know, the other places means Tanya Perik. Here it says Perik Lam Vav and Lam Zayin. Perik, I was going to say my mouth, here it says Lam Vav and Lam Zayin. The Rebbe says, I just gave you two Taijin of Ben Aliyah. What's the difference? The first Taijin of Ben Aliyah is a person who's working on self-perfection. The second Taijin of Ben Aliyah is a person who's working on what the Eibishter needs him for. He says, Al Rebbe, they're really the same. In the Madrega of Tadagama, they're really the same. Because a person who's working on self-perfection and achieves self-perfection has given away his Nefesh Bahamas to the Eibishter. And the Nefesh Bahamas has been transformed into good, and the way it's parallel, the way it mirrors itself. In Avodah is that a person who completely transforms his darkness to light and his bitterness to sweetness is making a Direh B'Tachteinim. It's automatic. Why? If a person successfully overcomes the Yetzer Hara, so he raises something up, and everything that goes up comes back down. So even though, basically, in other words, even though when you learn it, you could say that a Ben Aliyah means he's very close to Hashem, he's above the Yetzer Hara. In Amitis HaNyanim, a Ben Aliyah is somebody who does Birurim. Because automatically, when he does Birurim, there's a Surusat Latata, a Surusat Li'ela, the Chayes Elikim comes down into this world, which is the idea of Direh B'Tachteinim. Okay, we're finished. Finished the Perek and finished the Shir. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? So, Bli Neder, next week, we'll start Perek Yudal for Hashem's help. Okay? Thank you for coming. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. Alle Tag sagt man, Yeser Mimasha Pora Oisim Ha'egel Ha'egel Oisim Ha'pora. We want Mashiach now.